I sing about. There ain't no limitations to your amazing grace, your amazing grace. And there's something about the way your love shines on my face. Oh no, I can never get enough of you. This feeling can't be wrong. I'm about to get my worship on. I'm gonna sing a brand new song. Yeah, I'm about to get my worship on. Take me away on this beautiful day. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful day. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful day.
That you all are joining me on today. One of the things that I want you to think about, are you living, are you thriving, or are you just barely making it, going through the motions? Well, my guest on today, Dr. Vernon Rayford, is here, and we're going to talk about your greatest investment, which is your body. What are you inputting? What are you taking? What are you saying that I need, I want, but are you really following the rules of the game to make sure that you live your best life yet? So Dr. Rayford, thank you for joining us again on Tammie Nichols TV.
Thank you for having me.
It's just amazing how sometimes we eat, we sleep, and we complain. That's the best way that I can say it. And it's all about what you eat, you know, in regards to you being healthy, being able to exercise, and just live your best life now.
Right.
So before we get into that, I want to go back.
Yeah.
Because you have a heart and passion for people, just making sure that they know what the symptoms, the signs are, and what we can do to make sure that we live a long life. So why did you even decide to go in the field of medicine? Because your parents were educators, correct?
Yes, yes. So both my parents were teachers, and small town, Holly Springs, and I did well in school. And if you did well, you had a couple of career options. You're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and lawyering didn't seem interesting to me. And so I had the idea of being a doctor when I was really young, but I didn't really have the reasons.
Oh, wow.
And so as I progressed through high school, did summer programs and research, it took me actually a while to come around to wanting to be a physician.
Because even coming out of Holly Springs, you have Russ College, and most of those that attend Russ College were educators. Some of my best teachers were former, they call them Bearcats, I believe.
Yeah.
Down in Holly Springs, Mississippi. And I truly thank them for imparting into my life. So saying that you want to become a physician, I'm sure it's like, why?
Yeah, and so the path is tough, so you really do have to connect with your why. And I think as a schooling, research, it got down to, I guess that's why I'm here now, it got down to the people.
The people.
And so before I made that decision to pursue medical training in medical school, I was in pharmacy school. In fact, wrapping up pharmacy school, the research program was pharmacy-based research, and I was really excited about research. But then as I got through training, what I found was I really enjoyed the interaction with the people. And that really pushed me to say, I appreciate the pharmacists at Walgreens and the hospital, but I want to be with the people, even if I'm not writing a prescription medication.
Isn't that something? So you literally had to transition. Was there a whisper from God, or was it just something that you felt in your heart you needed to do because you wanted to be connected to the people? I
wanted to be connected to the people, and whisper from God. I mean, you know, this was, you know, certainly as in my life, God has spoken loudly through people.
Yeah.
And certainly, so you're almost done with pharmacy school. And so, and typically, you know, it was almost, I heard more reasons not to go on to be a physician at that point. Why do you want to go on? You've gone this way. Why can't you just be a pharmacist? It's a great living, true, but that wasn't my calling. Amen. And so as many voices in opposition, it was those voices, an uncle who's a physician, Vernon, if you don't apply to medical school, you don't have the choice to go.
Jesus.
And so I was postponing decisions, postponing applying, and then as speaking to me, and I'm really thankful in my life as I was immature and about to make some pivotal life-changing decisions, that God had people in my life that told me like it was. I refuse to let you do this. I had mentors to say, I refuse to let you change your college schedule. I refuse to let you not do this program, because I was listening to the people who were speaking negatively. It was people who weren't even in the program telling me that it was going to be too difficult to do the pharmacy program and honors college. People who were not members of either were telling me that I couldn't do both together.
And you were listening to the negativity.
I was listening to the negativity, and I initially acted on it. I told my advisor that but God had placed that advisor in my life back when I was in the high school summer program.
Wow.
And that advisor was like, I know you. I know you. I refuse to meet with you on this decision because you're not going to make that decision.
Absolutely.
And at that point, it was like, well, she said I couldn't do it. And I was like, but at that, I look back loud and clear.
That was God
loud
speaking.
And clear, God. Loud and clear. And so I look back to those pivotal decisions, finishing up pharmacy, good living, and it was, well, why do you want to do it? Can't you just be satisfied?
Yes.
And I look back, and the answer was I would not have been satisfied because I would not be sitting in this chair.
Absolutely.
Because it wasn't where kind of God was leading me. It wasn't where the heart, it's hard work, and you need something that's going to keep you there and recharge your batteries.
That's it.
It was not going to be that.
The passion, the recharge, and to have something to live for, to be impactful and make a difference. And I remember reading and also seeing you on television. I think it was WTVA during the COVID season. You were on the ground running. You were in the community. You were there right with the people. So just share just some insight, because that had to have come from God, because most people were masked up and away from, they didn't want to be around anyone, but here you were on the forefront of it all, making a difference.
Well, let me say, it was nothing but God. And I'll kind of carrying on, decided, applied, and then I got confirmation after I started the actions.
Wow.
And so I had to apply. I had to be in the middle of interviews before I got that confirmation that this was the right thing.
Yeah.
And so for me, sometimes that confirmation happens way after I have to take the first actions. Way before I'm not even sure about it. Some things I just had to take the first actions, and then once that confirmation came, that was a peace. There was a peace that kind of came, and it's like, you're doing right because you found folks that had similar stories, and it was in that confirmation that came. And I'm gonna get back to COVID but there's a testimony, and I don't think I'll be able to leave without it.
And those that are watching need to hear the testimony, because they see that you're Dr. Rayford, but they don't understand that God ordered your steps. God ordered my steps. And you had to adhere to His word. I had to adhere to His word. And walk in faith.
I had to be where I needed to be.
Absolutely.
But I also had to trust Him maximally, because there was a point, and we'll get to it, but there was a point that if my own decision was to just let it all go. My God. But I wouldn't have been there to be there for COVID. Yeah. And so confirmation, application to medical school, applied, God started working it out. Applied only a few schools, a few interviews, got admitted, scholarship. So God's kind of taken me there. But I, at that point, thought it was my works. Wow. I thought it was me.
He had to humble you.
Well, I didn't get it yet.
But it's coming.
Didn't get it yet, but it came. Didn't get it yet. And so look what I did. Wow. Went to a great medical school in Vanderbilt, great school. Finished medical school, did my training program, one of the best places in the world. I did my residency at one of the Harvard hospitals in Boston. So again, I didn't really have that relationship myself. Grew up in the church around me, knew about God, knew about Jesus. I went to church. But as far as like really connecting that the good that's happening in my life is a blessing from God, didn't necessarily connect it. I wasn't cavalier in saying that God didn't have a role, but it wasn't at the forefront.
What happened, Dr. Rayford? I'm going to speed you up because I'm getting excited. What happened that was life-altering?
Finished the training program and decided to come back home to Mississippi. If you're in Boston and you decide to come to Mississippi, people are saying, oh my goodness, you're doing so great. You're going to go back to Mississippi and save folks. I came back home to Mississippi, And the first job that I had was a miserable experience.
Oh,
it
my.
was so bad that within the first 2 weeks, I was ready to quit medicine completely.
Jesus.
And not only that, I didn't really have the language to understand barriers. And so you may have heard things like burnout. And so I had some really, really public experiences with burnout.
Yeah.
When things just are at such crisis, there were public crises, and it was just a really public experience of burnout. And at that point, it was, I've come from the best training programs in the country, and I can't even do my first job.
In Mississippi.
In Mississippi at home. I'm back home, and I can't even do it. I was so out of sorts.
Wow.
That I didn't want to be a physician anymore. And then it felt like the process of coming back, because it was such a public thing, it was a very humiliating process to come back.
Yeah.
And in that process, I didn't have any other choice but to either quit or to just lean in. God, you've brought me. And God, if you can turn this around. And I mean, even then it wasn't even thought about this. I couldn't have imagined I'd be here at that point. It was, I doubt that I can even be the physician. And so I'm going to focus in on how can I make sure that I can be the physician. And so I left that job. I didn't even last a year in that job, but I was able to stick around. See, God needed me not there. God needed me to stick around. God needed me to be in a place that seemed so much less lucrative because God had today in mind.
Wow.
God had the pandemic in mind.
Yes.
And so from that position of moving to the clinic, from that first job, and that intense focus on, you know what, I'm going to focus on being the best I can do, and the best I can do here.
Yeah.
Not my training, nothing. I'm going to focus on it. And that helped me build back intentionally. And that intentionality meant that now I was in the right place for those next opportunities. But I had to be knocked off of a path.
Wow.
I had to be knocked off a path to kind of get myself back to where my heart was, because when I first decided on that job, I decided to do it not because I loved it. I thought I was going to be good at it.
Wow. So you thought?
I thought I was going to be good at it. That's why I chose it, not because there was a love for it.
Wow.
I thought I was good at it. I thought that my training prepared me for it, but not that and so I had to be knocked off that path so that I can be here. And I'll tell you, I love what I do, because now I have the opportunity to teach physicians and teach physicians while taking care of patients by also being active in the community.
Well, let's pause right there for a moment. And I want you just to share, for some of those that are watching, they're not familiar with you. Some may say, I've seen him in the news, I've seen him in the newspaper. So tell them the name of the clinic and exactly where you're located and what you do and how they can connect with you.
Yeah, perfectly. So now I am what's called a faculty physician. So I'm a physician teacher. I teach physicians. Our program is called the Internal Medicine Residency Program at North Mississippi. Our clinic is located at 845 South Madison in Tupelo. If you're familiar with the area, it's across the street from MedServe. And we teaching physicians with the training physicians. We're taking care of patients. If you like to reach out, our number is 662-377-1100. I don't take care of patients by myself anymore. And so the patients I take care of is with the training physician. The opportunity, though, in that scenario is that the training physicians have lots of enthusiasm. They're very, very smart. They're very accomplished. And so having 2 physicians or 3 physicians is certainly a bargain. We don't charge you any extra.
Yeah. Well, I know we talked about this prior to recording about the rural health study. I know you're familiar with that. What words of wisdom would you give to someone who's watching right now, who maybe just like you were, saying, I don't know if I want to go into medical school, I may just want to stop right here. What words of encouragement would you give them?
So if you're early on, you may have to take the first few steps. And the first few steps may be understanding what you need to do if you want to go to medical school. And so today, there's classes you have to take, there's experiences you have to take before you apply to med school. There's an entrance test called the MCAT. And so if you're early, it's learning about the things you need to do. If you're a little further along, it's about seeking out mentors, reaching out to people, reaching out. You can call the clinic and kind of say, hey, I saw Dr. Rayford and I have a question about something. I love those experiences, because I think there's also a reality is that, in terms of practicing medicine, I'm not going to be able to practice medicine forever. That we're going to need young physicians to join the profession and to take over. And so for those who are thinking about it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Number one, you can do it. Two, it's learning the steps. Three, finding mentors. And four, not letting anybody talk you out, kind of refer you back to number one. You can do it.
You can do it, yeah. It's a mindset, and I think once they find their heart and passion, it just empowers you in any profession that you're in.
I think so, and I think I think that it's a big barrier. Maybe 5 would be careful who you listen to.
Yeah.
So be careful who you'll let plant seeds in your mind and in your heart, and just you have to be really careful, because you'll get to a point like I did I had people telling me not to do stuff that they didn't do themselves.
And why listen to them?
Why give them credibility? And the first question is, what was your experience with it? And if not, you can let that roll off. You can choose which seeds you allow, but you have to be really active, because sometimes if you're around folks and they're they're planting seeds, some may stick, even if those aren't seeds you would naturally choose.
Absolutely, that is so true. Now I want to kind of shift, because COVID is up on the rise again.
Yeah.
I shared even with our MSU students, it has increased tremendously. Just some little, steps that we need to take just to be aware and alert for the most part, because we're going into the fall season. It's been extremely hot. We've traveled, and now we're shifting to the fall season, and we're still having parties and gatherings. So what are some tips that we can take just to stay healthy? Yeah,
so first realize that COVID is still here. COVID's not going anywhere. COVID is going to mutate. The numbers are currently increasing. So I tell people to be aware. Be aware of what COVID is doing. Remember what COVID typically does around the seasons. We still have a summer, usually have a summer peak in our area of COVID, and we tend to have a winter peak. We're in the middle of a summer peak. School's back in session. People are back in different groups. It's so hot outside that people are inside together. And so really taking precautions to help us live safely with COVID. That means vaccines really make a difference. That means if you do have COVID, restricting access to people, getting treatments. Certainly don't spread it if you know you have it. And then that means thinking about your risk. If you're a high risk, and that may be age or health condition, then you may need to take extra precautions. So you may need to wear a mask when others aren't wearing a mask. You may need to avoid some of the really packed in tight gatherings if you are at high risk. And then if you are around people who are at high risk, so if you're living in a multi-generational household and there's a very vulnerable member, then you may need to, even though your individual risk isn't high, you may need to do those precautions because you're trying to protect your vulnerable loved one.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we have to, think about, most the elderly.
We need to think about others. I think the pandemic, the Bible, think about others as much, if not more, than you think about yourself. The lesson of the pandemic is to think about others.
Just consider it. There are people who would not mask up.
Consider it. No one wants to think that when it's all said and done that, the harm you cause by not being considerate is going to come back up. Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing in regards to COVID. And I know that some people that are watching right now, you may say that it's not real. Believe me, it is. In our family alone, in 2020 to 2021, I think we buried about 15 family members. And that was something that was life-changing for all of us. It was as heart attacks, respiratory problems, Some didn't know that they had COVID, and it was just instant.
Yes.
So, you know, you had the naysayers who would say, oh, COVID is not real, the government.
Yeah.
However the case may be.
Yeah.
Love those as you love yourself, and that's what we start doing, protecting one another, covering one another in prayer, pleading the blood of Jesus, taking the medication, the vitamin C, the elderberry, you know, the herbal teas, everything we needed to make sure that our immune system was strong enough so that when it did. So those that are watching me right now, make sure that you take precaution and prepare. That's the best thing that I can say, you know, in regards to preparing for COVID, because it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
So we have to be wise in our dealings with other people.
Exactly.
For the most part, I know the joke that people would say when somebody coughs back in the day, but you know, still today when they cough, I kind of look and say, okay, all right, is that deadly? But I kind of go the other way and move accordingly. All right, so let's shift and talk about, you know, something that most of us don't want to talk about, eating healthy. You know, we don't want to talk about, you know, I don't say diet because die is in that word of diet, but that healthy lifestyle. You know, so give us some tips of how we can eat healthy but still enjoy our food in moderation.
I think so. I think you really hit it. I think you really hit the nail, you know, on the head. So our nutrition, how we fuel our body, has an impact on how our body functions. And how we eat can impact chronic diseases like blood pressure, diabetes, complications like stroke and heart attack. And so there's an opportunity. Now, you don't want to make eating a kind of an experience where it's not enjoyable, because we recognize that there are some components that we include with eating, that kind of the ability to connect with family members, the fond memories of a family member. And so we have to be really careful clinically that we don't go in and we take people away from things that bring them joy.
Absolutely.
And so we begin with that humility of saying there are foods that bring us joy but may not be the best thing for us to eat every day, a lot of. Enjoy those foods, definitely connect those with the memories and the families and things like that, but also recognize that that there are certain foods that the nutritional value. So when I say nutritional value, I mean the good stuff. So you talk about supplements, those things that are in supplements and herbs, they come naturally in food. And if you can find foods that'll bring with it all those good things, those antioxidants, the vitamins that come in colorful fruits and vegetables, then you're getting it in the way that it's been intended to receive it.
Absolutely.
And so really focusing on making sure those come into your eating habits, and that when those naturally come in, some of the things may decrease. So, you know, some things are kind of what we call low-hanging fruit, like drinking sugar. So sugar sweetened beverages is kind of one of those things that it's better that you chew your calories. And so those are things that people can like look and find opportunities, but look at it as fuel. Look at it as getting the best fuel in its most natural form, but also to not avoid the things that you enjoy. If you have a relative that makes a really great dessert and that brings back great memories, we don't want you to avoid that. We just want you to put that into context.
We were watching on Netflix I guess documentary about just the culture of soul food and how it was prepared, and there was always the hot sauce, and you know, we had to add the extra things to it. And I think toward the end it was like how now they've shifted to, you know, the apple cider vinegar is what we're having to take now because we have the ulcers, the heartburns, or you know, those things where back then when Big Mama was cooking, it was like, oh, you know, I got to die from something. And so, you know, we laughed about those things, but nowadays it's not a joking matter. Because the fatty foods, you know, the cholesterol is high. And even now, I'm sure you, being a physician, and you can correct me if I'm not, even with the high blood pressure, you know, hypertension, there is a actual prescription, and I think it's with the PRIL that most African Americans are having some kind of allergic reaction to. I was reading an article.
Oh, so you're talking about what we call ACE inhibitors. So lisinopril. So yeah, we'll kind of go to like around nutrition. And so certainly a lot of attention has been focused on, you know, called soul food, Southern cooking. And so I always, as I talk to colleagues from different groups and experiences, I'll say, you know, you know, there's some element around that has been beneficial and really helpful, the communal part of it.
Right.
And so those relationships that kind of, in spite of every bad thing, we can get together around food that at some point the other group didn't want. And so we made something of the throwaways. And so thinking about that and honoring that as an asset, honoring that, but then to kind of go back and say, if we really wanted to look at the context, a lot of what we've called soul food, most people couldn't eat that every day.
No.
And so that ended up being weekend food or celebratory food. And so if we put it back into how it came, I asked my mom's like, most days we did not eat meat.
Wow.
Because that was kind of affordability and all that. The soul food and the rich traditions. And I think what may have happened transition was the rich traditions became a daily occurrence. When it becomes the daily occurrence, I think you get some negative health impacts. If you push it back to the celebratory times, even biblically, there were times of feast, but then there were times of fasting.
Yes.
And so that there were any, you know, when it was feast time, it was all out, everybody feast.
Yes.
But then there was a regular fast period. And so that recognition that there may be feast times. And I think, you know, we think culturally, I think if we can recognize it and maybe put it back into context to not take it away, because sometimes, you know, if you don't know the culture, we may be telling people to lose that social connection. Miss the social connection, and just really highlighting that kind of when the family comes together on the Sunday with an elderly relative and can unify around like that, the joy, you know, that may be okay. That may be okay versus every meal is this and this, and kind of teaching I guess the word would be temperance, teaching kind of the moderation around that. But back originally is that what we put in, our fuels, those support our body, and that if you fuel with too much of certain things like fatty foods, sugary foods, it can bring on stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the thing that we have to be conscious of. I absolutely love how you said the celebratory part of coming together, because I remember, you know, at grandparents' house, they had a feast. You know, whether it was neck bones, greens, cornbread, corn, they had several different types of meats, fried chicken, sweet potato, candied yams. But that's not something that, you know, we can eat every day because of our lifestyle.
You can't eat every day, and you also have to be conscious of the other part is how much we move.
Won't let it day go by. So put the drop top down, turn it up, I'm ready to fly. And ooh, there's something about the way your sun shines on my face. It's a love so true, I can never get enough of you. This feeling can't be wrong. I'm about to get my worship on. Take me away. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. I've got no need to worry. I've got no room for doubt. No matter what's coming at me, you'll always be the beautiful I sing about. There ain't no limitations to your amazing grace. Your amazing grace. And there's something about the way your love shines on my face. Oh no, I can never get